thewellnesscouch.com, streaming wellness into your lives. Download the app today.
This is Up for a Chat with your hosts, Cyndi and Kim Morrison.
Here we are, up for a chat about the hottest topics that are important to you, inspiring you to awaken the change within. I'm Cyndi O'Meara.
And I'm Kim Morrison. Well, are we in for a treat this week? The gorgeous, the incredible, the one and only Dr. Damian Kristof is joining us. And for those of you who've been living under a rock for some time and do not know this special human, perhaps it's time that you realize that this amazing soul is not only an incredible chiropractor, but he's also a nutritionist. He's also been a television presenter, a wellness presenter, and pretty much one of the best friends any one of us chicks in the wellness world could ever have. Welcome to the beautiful Up for a Chat podcast, gorgeous Damo. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, Kimbo. Cyndi, you too. I tell you what, you say all the right things. Thanks for having me on your podcast. It's always the most unbelievably special thing to be able to, chat with you two, and now to be on your podcast. So thank you very much.
I was just going to also say, he's my doppelganger. Is that what you say?
Doppel, yeah.
That one.
Yeah, we're brother and sister from another mother.
We are.
No, we're peas in a pod. Yeah, peas in a pod.
Well, you better explain that.
I think it's a good a good one to explain. And Damian, maybe you could do it. How did the three Up for Chatters and the three wellness guys become? Like Kim had hers, Karen had hers, and then I had you.
Yeah, I know. It was so good, wasn't it? Well, so I think I fell in love with you, Cyndi, when you spoke at a DG, I think it was, and all of a sudden you're speaking chiropractic philosophy at a dynamic growth congress. And I'm a naturopath and nutritionist, and I've been doing that for years. And then I see this gorgeous woman up on stage speaking about nutrition and speaking truth. It was unreal. And then it was tied in with this underpinning irrefutable philosophy known as the philosophy of chiropractic. And that in itself was unique. And so I remember going straight up to you, V-lining straight to you as you walked out of that auditorium, and I said, "Hi, Cyndi, I'm Damian Kristof. I'm studying to be a chiropractor. I'm a naturopath and nutritionist. I'm on television too," and so like you're going, "Oh, that's pretty cool. Good for you." And so we had a little chat, and my heart was beating out of my throat, and I was like really, really excited. And then I moved back to Australia, having studied chiropractic in New Zealand, and then met Lawrence Tam. And so Lawrence and I had done some talking together in Western Australia. I had a muesli company at the time, a gluten-free muesli company. It was called WBC at that time. And then I transitioned that brand to something called Forage. And even though it had grain as its base, it was still gluten-free, which offered people and whole and no added sugars. And so there were so many great things about it. It was a great product. So I then traveled around Australia speaking, and Lawrence and I did some work together. He said, "Damo, why don't we do a podcast together?" I'm like, "I don't know what that is, mate." And he told me what this podcast thing was. We're talking like 2008 or 2000. It must be 2008, 2009, something like that. And he said, "I've got some guy, he's a chiropractor in Adelaide. I met him when I was doing something else. He could be a really good person." I'm like, "Okay, cool. What's his name?" He says, "Brett Hill." I said, "Oh, okay, cool. Why don't we hook up and make this happen?" So we get together. They both seemed to know what a podcast was. I still had no idea. They said, "Look, you just turn up. You just be the rock star. You just turn up and we'll do everything." I'm like, "That's perfect for me." Happy to be the rock star. So at this point in time, my TV show was still on air. I'm now practicing chiropractic. I've got this muesli company, and we start this podcast thing. And it's the three wellness guys. Lawrence is doing mindset, Brett's doing exercise, and I'm doing nutrition. And so then we hear that you girls are wanting to do some stuff, and long story short, you bring to the table Up for a Chat. I think we interviewed you on our podcast. You said, "We want to do this too." So then we say, "Well, why don't we start this hosting platform?" So we started a hosting platform called the Wellness Couch, and you girls were the first on the couch. You were our first ever people on the couch, and Cyndi and I, we were the nutrition ones, and then Kimbo and Bretto, you were doing the exercise, and then having Karen and LT doing the mindset stuff just was a match made in heaven. So we all hit it off. And so then we did the wellness summits and then the breakthroughs, and we did all this great, amazing stuff. And then I think where we fell flat was the BFO. That didn't really go well. Remember the BFO get together we're all going to, in the space of like 15 seconds, we decided we're going to do a retreat together. We called it the BFO. And I think it was supposed to be the blinding flash of the obvious, but I think we called it the big F off like retreat, and it just didn't sell on stage, so we didn't end up doing it. But that would have been amazing. Imagine we had pulled that off. But anyway, that's kind of where we got to, and then we've been friends since then, and we'll be friends for life. We're lifers, which I love, and we're still speaking the same language.
It's such a powerful, beautiful story, and something that when you don't push things evolve. And that's something that all of us have really transitioned into quite beautifully, is following our hearts and then allowing the money to flow. I just love to dab into your business mind before we get into anything else that you've done. But when you look at the podcast and the platforms that we all spoke from, and then the summits and the breakthroughs and all the retreats that we've done, as a business model, do you think being a speaker, being an educator, being an advocate for wellness, and then putting on these events, is that something that you felt back in that time, 2009, 10, 11, 12, when we really were transitioning into an educational way of being, that we really did kind of trailblaze our ways through that, even if it was a bit blindly?
Yeah, we were definitely ahead of our time. There's no doubt about it. And these days, the word wellness is synonymous with longevity, so people kind of talk about longevity, and it's really about wellness hacks, which is what we were doing a decade ago. And it's the same stuff, just with a different label. But we did trailblaze it, and no one was able to do it successfully. No one was able to get 1,000 people into an auditorium and then get fabulous speakers up on stage talking about stuff that was sometimes controversial, but really help people make better decisions. We were helping people make much healthier decisions, and really we paved the way for almost every well-being and lifestyle opportunity in Australia that took place. That pretty much came through the couch, as whether you interviewed somebody or we interviewed somebody or one of the other podcasters. And at one point we had 40, I think, no, maybe it was 20 something different podcasts hosted on the Wellness Couch. And they were all of different persuasions, so we had building biology, covered off. We had food covered off. We had exercise covered off. We had sexual health covered off. We had parenting covered off. There's all holistic parenting. So we kind of had almost every single thing covered off, and then experts from around the world, talking on each of these, podcasts and then hosted on the platform. We introduced a lot of it to Australia, and that was really powerful. The speaking model is compensated in multiple ways, and of course you get paid with money, but I also felt that the exchange came in the benefit that was derived from the listener or the attendee. So the eyes lighting up and opening wide open, and then starting to ask better questions, then taking that information back to their family and changing their life, and then the flow and effect of that's the butterfly effect of the things that you say and do, and how far that actually reaches. Where does that get to, that information, and whose life does that change? And now I see these people, young people, coming through these days doing food nutrition stuff that Cyndi, you and I were talking about 20 years ago, and they're still talking about it now, and they've found their voice, and they're using a platform that's similar to what we were doing. Maybe it's YouTube or whatever, but they're out there doing that same stuff, and it's that handing over, passing the baton, letting people continue to spread a healthy message. I think it's tougher these days, though. I reckon, I think there's a lot more censorship. People are being told that they can't say X or they can't say Y, and so it's a little bit different. But I get a lot of joy from sharing. I get heaps of joy from sharing. And from a business model perspective, Kimmy, coming back to that, we get paid well if we speak. When we're on stage, we do get paid well, but definitely the hug or the stories of life-changing moments as a result of something that you said, I think that's as valuable, I find anyway.
There's also the fact that it wasn't just speaking, and it wasn't just the breakthroughs and the retreats and the podcast, but you got, well, when you started 100 Not Out, I believe it was, and maybe you could talk to us about 100 Not Out and who you've interviewed, but people want to spend time with you. And you created some incredible experiences in the blue zones. And I want us to really explore the blue zones, what's happened to them, how they've been maybe a little bit debunked, especially the issue. Yeah, I know there's a lot of questions in there, but you went on to do even more with those experiences, as did Awaken the Change Within. You know, with Up for Chat, you know, we took people on experiences to Peru, Africa, New Zealand. We had more fun, I think, than the people that came with us. But we had a lot of fun.
They're the greatest. They're the greatest things ever. I love them. Well, you've got your academy, and we continue to be teaching, and Kimmy, with your products, with your essential oils and how they reach to the millions of people. Like, it's very influential, and in my opinion, we move the needle in the right direction. And I feel very strongly that we do that, which is great. So Marcus Pearce and I formed another podcast in 2011. So in 2011, Piercy said to me, "Damo, how you feeling about turning 40? I go, "Mate, I'm shitting myself." And can I say shit? Can I say that? Is that all right? Okay, good, great. It's PG, it's not G. And so I said, "Mate, I'm 39. I don't know what happens next year. I'm not too sure what's going to happen when I turn 40. Am I going to be over the hill? Is the best of my life behind me? What are we going to do?" And he said, Damo, I just watched a video, and you've got to watch it. And so he sends me this video. It's on a DVD. And for those of you who don't know what that is, that's a little disc with pictures on it. And you have to put it in a machine, and it spins it, and then it puts it onto your television. So I was watching that, and it was Healthy at 100, or it was the 100 Plus Club. It was one of those videos. And I loved it. I thought, Piercy, this is really cool. Like, these are 100-year-old people, centenarians, who are living a great life. He goes, yeah, they've made the rest of their life the best of their life. And I said, yeah, that's exactly what they've done. And he goes, why don't we do a podcast on it? I'm like, cool, let's do that. So at 39, I embarked on a journey to understand what it was like to age successfully. And at 39, you haven't really aged that much. And so I understand that these days, now that I'm 51, turning 52. And so we go back more than a decade, and we've done 620 episodes of that, where we've now interviewed centenarians around the world, Holocaust survivors, people who have lived in their 80s, 90s, have done an exceptional job at living well. But then we've also dissected the philosophy of aging. And then we've also considered, the impact of biohacking to age well. And, we'll look at all the biohackers and we understand what they're doing. But what really grabbed our attention was the Blue Zones project. So in 2007, Dan Buettner was doing some research with National Geographic. And with National Geographic, what he was trying to identify was, were there any patterns where people lived a long time, where they lived to 100 years old, or that they lived an exceptionally long life compared to other people in that culture? And they used blue pin tacks on a map to determine where these areas in the world were. And what it worked out to be is that these areas that formed clusters had lots of blue pins. And so they got called blue zones. And so these blue zones were then kind of further researched, and the research was validated. And they found that according to the birth and death records, they had exceptionally high aging and well-being statistics compared to other areas. So, for example, if you look at Ikaria, they have 50% less heart disease, 20% less dementia, and 30% less diabetes, for example, in Ikaria than what we do in Australia. And then if you look around other cultures, it's similar sort of statistics. If you go to Sardinia, the men live as long as the women, and it's exceptionally long. There's more centenarians in Sardinia than anywhere else in the world per capita. And so there's all of these statistics that kind of, you just go, wow, that's unbelievable. And so as we've kind of watched that whole product evolve, we've become not necessarily skeptical, but probably more critical of it. And so we've then seen some things that we, kind of ask questions about, and its evolution's move towards a plant-based kind of lifestyle, as opposed to the recognition that, for example, the shepherds in Sardinia had no access to plants except for what might be growing fresh. So they carried with them cured meats and cheese. So they only ate cheese and meat. That's all they ate. And there may be some wine in their flask or water. And then if they happen to find some berries along the way in the freezing cold, they'd eat it. Or if they found a tuber, then maybe they'd do something, but they didn't always have fire, so they couldn't cook it up. So they're really just having the cured meat and cheese. Whereas in the Blue Zone's reporting, they're saying, well, it's mainly a plant-based diet that kind of got these guys to here. And we're going, well, hang on a second, that's not true. So we've started to, just unravel a little bit of that. And then to watch what's happening in some of those cultures, for example, Okinawa, we'll have to start asking some more questions.
Do you want to just talk about Okinawa? And because we were talking about it before the podcast, and I think it's really important because I like we were suggesting places to go and visit. And we suggested Okinawa, and you just went, no, this is what's happening in Okinawa.
Yeah. Well, Cyndi, so we, as you know, and maybe listeners do or don't know, but we, as 100 on Out, Marcus and I have been running these tours to the European Blue Zone. So we really identify with the cultures in Greece and the culture in Sardinia, or the cultures in Sardinia. And when we explore the Sardinian Blue Zones, there's about 14 little villages that have exceptionally high aging statistics and wellbeing statistics. There's 14 little villages scattered amongst a massive island of about 1.4 million people, and it's really quite beautiful and amazing. And they all have their own little quirky bits of around food, but all of them socialize really well. They generally eat very well. They eat some form of, we'll call it a Mediterranean diet, but what they have in Oroli is different to what they have in Suelo, which is different to what they have in Narachi. Like, all the food that they eat is based on the area that they live in, not necessarily what somebody wrote in a book, so it's what they've got access to. Then if we look in Ikaria is an island where there's 7,000 inhabitants, and most of the people that have aged really well live away from the ocean. So they live up in the mountainous areas of Ikaria, and there are some areas, so the little village of Nas, which is where we go to, they live a really long time as well. So when we go there, we speak to them. The food that you eat in the bayside or the beachside towns is very rich in fish. But up in the mountains, they don't get access to fish. So they're having goat and horse and rabbit and, wild animals. They make cheese. They're all having the wine that they make from their own, vineyard. Not really vineyards, it's just vines. And so they're having all of that food. When we go to Okinawa, we don't go to Okinawa for a tour, because when we wanted to investigate it, much of the Okinawan culture has been overrun with the US naval base that's in Okinawa. So there's a US naval base, and as a result of the US naval base being there, you've now got Pizza Hut and Macca's and Burger King and In-N-Out and all of these, very famous US eating houses that don't follow a Japanese culture. And so the Okinawan way, so to speak, is now no longer there. Like they don't actually have that sort of culture as richly as what they used to. And so the diabetes in Okinawa is the highest rate in all of Japan. So type 2 diabetes is prevalent. I can't recall the exact number. Marcus is really good with numbers. I'm not. I'm good at telling stories, but Marcus is really good with numbers. And I think it's something like 50% of people over the age of, let's say it's 50, have type 2 diabetes. It's something ridiculous like that. It's an enormous number, and it's mainly because of the food and the lifestyle that's now infiltrated that culture. So they'll lose their blue zone status as a result of that. And then you've got the new blue zone, which is in Singapore. So that's the 6th blue zone. So that's a fascinating story as well, which maybe we can delve into.
Go to the new one. Can we talk about Loma Linda? So that's another one of the blue zones. And I never, that's based on a religion where they are in Loma Linda, and it's very much plant-based. Can you explain that blue zone? Because I don't, I read the book back in the, when it first came out. And I remember the 10 things, and diet was just one. My
Yeah.
favorite was wine at 5. We've turned that into whiskey at 5, but that was my favorite.
Well, if it's from Tasmania, at least the water's clean, right? So that's not a bad thing. So the wine at 5 is interesting because it's always done with friends and it's done with food, right? So that, which is a cultural thing, and we really enjoy that as well. It's hard to call it wine when it tastes like vinegar, but it's still wine, and they take great pride in it. And if they offer it to you, you say yes. You never say no. In Loma Linda, they don't drink alcohol. It's part of a religious, very religious focused culture. The Loma Lindens are Seventh-day Adventists by and large, and the research that's been published has come through the Loma Linda University around the Blue Zone kind of project. And so Dan Buettner is from Loma Linda. So that information for us is a little bit loaded. Now, they espouse a vegetarian and plant-based lifestyle. This is what they promote. But I think it's only like 20 or 30% of the whole of the population of vegetarian would identify as vegetarian. And less than that, let's say it's 10 or 15% would identify as being vegan. So whilst there's an overarching value that's being proposed, and the thought process is that you should eat plant-based and be vegetarian or vegan because you'll live longer and eat lots of beans and legumes and that sort of thing. That's the model. It's not necessarily what they're following. And so if you then extrapolate that out and you look to see what makes Loma Linda successful from a Blue Zone perspective, it's the cultural piece, it's the spirituality piece, it's the movement piece, it's the engagement piece. So it's those other things. It's not necessarily the diet that makes it successful. It's the other components, the 10 things that you kind of speak about, Cyndi. And in Marcus's book, Your Exceptional Life, he talks about 8 of them. And in the book that I will write one day, it's going to talk about 7 of them, because Marcus and I don't see eye to eye on that one thing. I reckon family and friends can be just one thing, because that's, you get to choose both family and friends. And I would say that Kim and Cyndi are like sisters, so that's family. And you started off as friends, but now you're family. And so you get to do that. And there are some family that you probably don't get to speak too much. And so the influence in your life is the people that you get to choose. And so I believe it's 7. Marcus still swears that it's 8. So I said in his next edition he should make it 7. He was like, oh, no way, it's 8. I go, but 7's a magic number, Piercy. And so we have these conversations. But I reckon Loma Linda's success comes from other things outside of food. I don't think it comes from the food. But maybe there's a part to play.
Now, I didn't realize there was a new Blue Zone in Singapore. I had no idea.
Yeah.
I haven't kept up with the Blue Zones, mainly because when I spoke to you and Marcus, and you told me about the Sunday lunches, which has got the big roast, but they were still eating meat all the time, I kind of went, oh, well, that's just another book that's, becoming unraveled. So now let's talk about Singapore. Because they live in high rises. Where's their sunshine? Yeah,
they get so much sunshine. It's hot all the time there. It's like 31 degrees day and night. My son Jackson's living over there at the moment. He's in Singapore. And so I've been over there a few times in the last couple of years. And it's really what the government's done to help their population age better and have less disease. And that's what's really got them the Blue Zone tick of approval. So what Dan Buettner then did is, once he wrote the Blue Zone book, he developed a program and he wanted to put it into different cultures. So Finland took it on, a number of other places took it on, and Singapore embraced the concept. If you look at Japan, for example, and Korea, they have other lifestyle functions that the government support and fund that assist people in being well. For example, forest therapy is funded by the Korean government and the Japanese government. So they'll, you go to the doctor says, Kimbo, you're a bit stressed at the moment. I'm going to recommend that you go and do forest therapy once or twice a week for the next 10 weeks. We'll pay for that for you. And so that's all funded, and which I think is an amazing thing. In Singapore, they've really tried to discourage people from using the roads. So they've made it almost impossible to afford a car. So to have your license in Singapore, I think it's $200,000 to have a car license. And to buy a car is, your car can't be any older than 10 years. and it's got, I think, a car in itself, like a normal, let's just say a Mazda 3, it's going to cost you $150,000 to buy a Mazda, and you can't import secondhand cars. They've always got to be brand new cars, and so they're really trying to discourage people from driving. So they've got this MRT, which is an underground train network, which links up every single community within 500 meters of the train stop, which is incredible. And then underground, you've got all this walking area, which enables people to walk everywhere without, any danger. And then above ground, you've got all these walking tracks that are away from the transport and the trains and the cars, so that everyone's safe and away from pollution. And then the government funds healthy food. So if you want to go down to the hawker market and you want to get yourself something that's healthy, on their menus, there's these little things. There's like a little logo that says, this is cheap because it's healthy, and the government funds it. And essentially it's vegetables with a protein, and it's amazing. And the government goes, you can have that for $3 and everything else is 20. And so like they're trying to encourage people to spend a lot less money on healthy food, which is so fantastic. And they charge a lot more for less healthy food. Water's 50 cents. Like, it's not $3.50 or $5 like it is here in Australia. It's super cheap. Like when you go to Europe, for example, you're buying water a litre for 50 euro cents for a litre. And here you come back here and you're paying, for 300 mils, $5. Like, it's out of control. I went to the tennis the other day, $8.50 for a pump. $8.50 for water. It's disgusting. So anyway, we're not encouraging people to stay healthy here, but in Singapore, they're encouraging people to stay healthy, and they're getting a reduction in their disease statistics, and they're getting an improvement, an increase in their longevity statistics. So they've now been qualified as the 6th blue zone. That's where that's come from, which is really exciting, I think. And that's a good move by the government to help people stay well.
It's such a powerful thing when you realise a government actually gets behind something. Well, we've known over many, many years that the government will often support pharmaceutical companies, or where there's patents or abilities to actually make huge profits. There's been a massive turnaround, even seeing, even in America right now, turning around and reinstating monies lost to those frontline workers who chose not to get the vaccine,
Yes.
etc. So
Yes.
what's, in your humble opinion, what did COVID do to this whole, I guess, approach to health, longevity and wellness? And how is that affecting you and implementing a more healthy lifestyle down under here in Australia, do you think?
I think that's such a great question, because I think immediately, like during that COVID period, and I'm in Melbourne, so we had the most lockdowns in the world. I think the longest lockdown was 270 days, which is our longest one that we had, which was emotionally traumatic and really has affected a lot of the mental health of the younger generation. And it's impacted probably people's desire to work. So we found it really difficult to kind of get people to work again, most probably because they found other things that they could do with their life, So a lot of people only want to work 4 days a week at the most, and 2 of those might be in the office and 2 would be from home. So it's really shifted the work-life I don't know, I wouldn't say balance, I'd say a mathematical equation. People are spending a lot less time in the office working, and they're trying to spend more time at home, because they can then get out and walk the dog, or they can get out and exercise and move. They can socialize more, which I think is a really important thing. But I think what has happened as a result of coming out of COVID, and obviously everything's really expensive, is that people are now busier than they've ever been. People are trying to do all the things that they did during COVID, as well as all the things that they used to do before COVID, and they're trying to bring all those together. And I find that people are a little less organized these days, because they're kind of trying to fit everything in, and they might deflect some of that lack of I don't know, what would you call it, commitment to something. I find that people like to change times a lot. Like, they like to just, I've double booked you, or I'm, and as a result, they're trying to do too many things now. So, but I still feel that people are more mindful of movement and exercise now than what they ever have been, because they felt better when they moved more during the COVID days. So I think that's been a really big shift. From a food perspective, people have gone back to basics more, I think. So I do think that people are eating more sensibly. They're doing less fads, which I think is really good. There was a lot of fad stuff going on at the time, so people were kind of swinging to paleo and then going all the way to carnivore and then to vegan and then to somewhere else. I think we're back somewhere in the middle there. We're a bit more omnivore, which I think it's definitely music to my ears. I prefer that. And so I think there's an awareness. I think the other thing that I've seen too in practice is that people are less likely to take lots and lots and lots of supplements. They're really specific with what they're taking. So they'll fall in love with a particular brand. Let's say it's Changing Habits, and they will go, "That's what I'm going to have," and then they become very brand loyal. So I'm having, maybe a B vitamin or maybe a magnesium supplement, but I'm not doing B vitamins, magnesium, coenzyme Q10, turmeric, and so on and so forth. So they're maybe a little bit more discerning, asking some better questions. I think what's most important for me at the moment is what I think people are asking.
I think they're also being more skeptical about medicine and drugs and medications and
Sure. For sure.
all the things that we say. I know I've always been skeptical. That's just me because that's what I was brought up like. But I have friends who are very sick at the moment or have been diagnosed with cancer. In my swimming group alone, we've had a couple of sudden deaths in the water. Yeah, we've had a couple of sudden deaths in the water. Got another one. They don't know what's wrong with him. He's in hospital delirious right at the moment. And I just found out today that one of our swimmers who's an ex-magistrate, he has a brain tumor. And I think people are going, hang on, what is happening? Why have we got all these problems? Like I have another friend who's normally very, very healthy. She's had COVID 4 times. She's got RSV, pneumonia, all on top of each other, ends up in hospital, doesn't normally go to hospital. So they're questioning. They never questioned before. So do you think that people are a little bit more skeptical about always trusting one authority as opposed to maybe there's somebody else out there that's got the answer?
Yeah. I don't think the drug companies did medicine any favors. And the governments didn't do medicine any favors during the COVID time because they threw out they made a lot of comments that were fear-driven incentives to get people to conform. And as a result of doing that, a lot of people started to distrust and ask questions. As a result of some of the side effects of the things that they've had, whether they've had I don't know, whether they've actually had COVID or whether they've had vaccine reactions or there's been complications after COVID or whatever, long COVID, for example, people have become very skeptical just generally about advice. And so they're looking to experts like ourselves on podcasts. They're looking to ChatGPT. They're looking to, probably move on from Google to, find ways in which they can get credible information that kind of sounds right, and then they'll ask their friends, and then they might ask their doctor. So the doctors kind of had to take a bit of a back seat because they got involved and embroiled in a promotion of something that wasn't proven. And for some people, that was very, very dangerous. And for other people, they got away with it relatively scot-free. So it's made people think, who do I trust now? I think you're right there, Cyndi, for sure.
Yeah. It's interesting because, like when I had my baby, I chose not to give them their childhood schedule. And I never heard from the government, never heard a thing.
No.
And when my children are now having babies, the first child, they've chosen to do things differently and they've not heard from the government.
Yeah.
The second child, which has been since COVID, every month there is a letter from the government saying that they're not up to date. But I actually have questioned it. It says it's a simple, safe and effective way of reducing, combating disease. I can't remember exactly what it says. So I actually rang the number on them. It was a Medicare cut one. And I rang the number and said, can you please give me the study that says that the current schedule, which is increasing at an unprecedented rate, with RSV now and flus and I just cannot believe what they're giving these kids. So I said, can you please send me the study? And they couldn't find it or anything like that. So they sent me another number and I went to it. It was complaints. And I told them, I'm not complaining. I just want to know the study. So they sent back to the Medicare number. Then I got sent to, from that number, I got sent to Queensland Minister of Health and the National Minister of Health. So I sent a letter to them and I said, please send me the study of safe and effective. And that's all I'm asking. No, I'm not asking anything else. I'm not complaining. I just want to see your study. So they sent me 3 pretty brochures, not one study in it, telling me why people are not having the vaccine now. Because there's more and more mothers and fathers that are saying, hey, we're now questioning this. You told us this. This wasn't right. Now we're questioning this. So they sent me a whole bunch of pretty brochures. So I went back and I said, I don't want the pretty brochures. I want the study. That's where I'm standing at the moment. But I just they are badgering. Because
it's all done emotionally. It's all emotional. It's emotional. No one wants to make the wrong decision for their child. So if you make it a logical decision, it's easy because it's logical. Does this add up? No. Does it add up? Yes. You're going to make a decision for yes, if it adds up. But when it becomes emotional and somebody says to you, well, if you don't do this, then you put your baby at risk of X, Y, Z. And even worse, if you don't do it, you make all the other kids at risk because you didn't do it. And you're decreasing the community's ability to prevent and ward off infection because you're now that one in the herd that didn't get jabbed. That in itself is an emotional conversation. So no one wants to be seen to be making the wrong decision. So this is a really emotive conversation because what ends up happening is that people will defend black and blue what it is that they decided to do, regardless of whether or not they've got information. It's really just the defense of their decision, which is an emotional thing. So the governments can play on that. They can say, you could create harm. You could cause harm. And then no one wants to ever think that they're doing that to their child.
So do you think they're backtracking on the likes of people who were outspoken about COVID and perhaps the blanket approach to trying to heal us all from this wicked disease? So, for instance, the likes of someone like Pete Evans, who was absolutely annihilated and castigated and completely made and fined and all sorts of things. Now it's almost he's rising back again and people are starting to think he's not that quackery after all. He's a friend of all of ours and we've watched him. He's taken on a very spiritual approach to it, really, which has been quite profound in his growth and evolution as a human. Well, what are your thoughts around people like him that were really, really put through such a tough time?
Oh, he's a legend. But we saw the same thing with Novak Djokovic. So you saw Novak.
Just let me talk about Novak Djokovic just for 1 second.
Yeah.
Just before you keep going about Pete
How good
and
is
Novak.
he?
I freaking love him. I've got a major man crush on him. I just adore him. His
you got
whole
a girl
world.
Crush. Girl boy. That's a proper crush.
Well, that's the thing.
Yeah.
And on top of that, his book Serve to Win is what helped Danny understand why going gluten-free was one of the best things for him. But anyway, that's aside. He follows our Cyndi.
Really?
On Instagram. He follows our Cyndi.
Well, we do. That's so good.
I just wanted to add that one in, that someone like beautiful
amazing.
Novak just thinks our Cyndi is a freaking legend. Just thought we'd add that one in. Now back to you. Sorry.
Well, I think she's a freaking legend too. But I also think that he's a freaking legend. I reckon Pete Evans is a freaking legend. What's fascinating about this is what they needed was scapegoats. And they found people that in the media, if you say something in the media, they will hang you out to dry. And there's no coming back. Regardless of what Pete actually did say, he had no ability to get it out to the masses. Regardless of the way Novak came into Australia during COVID, regardless of how he did it and who said that it was okay, he was not able to say it without them calling him crazy or breaking the rules. And then basically the media inspired rebellion against people who didn't conform to whatever the standard was. And so that created an underground, basically, created a massive underground, almost not a dark web, but a darker space where people had to kind of hide. And people then, of course, that that behavior becomes unraveled by people that are being good. So you look at Pete, he's maintained being good. He's just done a good job. And then you look at Novak, he's just maintained being good. And eventually people are going to go, you know what, we probably weren't right doing that. We weren't right. How great. So Pete's back. He's doing good stuff. He's back again, is he, Pete?
Yeah. Do you know, it's
I love that.
interesting. My son at the time had thankfully finished school. So I felt particularly sad for young people through that whole time. They didn't get to graduate or do their proms or balls or whatever it is that they were doing to really celebrate that evolution into adulthood. And I feel like you said, the mental health of a lot of our young people, the isolation and all those sorts of things. But it's interesting. I think back to that very first year, 2020, when it kind of all hit, when I still thought Corona was a beer and didn't even realize we were in trouble. But when the whole thing started to unfold, about 4 or 5 months in, Jacob just intelligently turned around and he says to me as a young man, "Oh, Mum, just let's all take a chill pill. Let's just enjoy the time out that we're all getting to hang together." And he said, "Because I'm telling you, in 5 years' time, no one's even going to be talking about this and it's all going to have a reverse look at it anyway. Let's just chill." And it was potentially, and we were lucky in Queensland, I have to say, we didn't get anywhere near the lockdowns that you guys did. So it's just quite beautiful when you look to the younger generation, just their insights and the way that they look at it. But then I also see young women and men coming through that are pregnant, and okay, they're not now necessarily telling people about the COVID vaccine, but it's the RSV vaccine, that this is really important. And you mentioned it just before, this whole fear mongering and the way that we look at it. One thing Cindy's always alluded to, and yourself included, has been that the body has natural immunity, and when we give it the right tools, it creates the right environment for us to thrive. Linking back to the Ikaria, Sardinia, the blue zones, is that, I'm just curious to know, do they get letters every week about breast screening, bowel cancers and childhood vaccinations? Like, what's the comparison in those blue zones when we look at it from this point of view?
Yeah, wow, that's such a great question. We ask that question when we go to Ikaria. We ask those sorts of government involved in medicine questions to Thea, who's our host in Ikaria, and she looks at us and goes, "What? They do that? They make it? Are you kidding me? There's no way we would let that happen here in Greece. That's not happening." So they do have a vaccination program over there. They do have some degree of public health care in Greece, but it's nowhere near as authoritative or authoritarian as what it is over here in Australia. In Sardinia, it's probably quite similar to what we have over here. They do it with less fear, though, so it's not about fear mongering. It's more about it's done differently. It's a bit kinder, but you've still got choice. So it's not forced upon you, and there's no jab, no pay, or no jab, no play. Any of those sorts of campaigns. There's none of that goes on over there. There's no penal kind of system that forces you to make decisions, but they're much better at explaining why somebody would make a particular decision. So they spend time with people to make a decision, and it's both sides of the decision. It's not one or the other. It's one and the other, and let's weigh up the options. That's really what they do in Sardinia.
There was a book that came out, and I think it was like 2021. I'm not sure, and it was called Hypocrisy, and it was by 2 medical doctors here in Australia, and they actually talked about all the screenings that were happening in Australia, and that there was no proof that it changed any statistic,
any outcome.
In an actual fact, it made outcomes worse because you had a slight scare and then invasive surgery or invasive treatments happened and the outcome was worse. And I'm surprised, we actually should get them on. They were very much, it was COVID, because I remember them talking about the COVID vaccine, and I went, oh, maybe we won't get them on. But I think I'd like to get them on now because they did talk about all of those measures, and they even talked about a knee surgery that there's no benefit in it. But
Nah,
yeah, it
they
was
still do it.
incredible what they took. One was an orthopedic surgeon, and the other one was maybe an anaesthetist, and they did such an incredible job in this book, Hypocrisy. So
Hypocrisy. Yeah, I remember looking at that book. Yeah, I should read that too.
it's
But
good.
that study you refer to is to do with the arthroscope. So they were doing arthroscopes on people, just a little, what they say, we're just going to do a little clean out. We're just going to take out all the debris and then, you'd be as good as new. And they found that people often had no improvement. So what they thought that they'd do then is they'd just nick the side of the knee and then put some stitches in there. This was the placebo, and said, we did your surgery, cleaned it all out. It's fantastic. And they didn't do anything. And so, and then people would either get better or not get better. And then they were like, well, this is exactly the same results as what we'd have if we actually did do the cut. And so that study then showed that whatever happens to the knee was more around placebo rather than any real therapeutic benefit derived from the cut. So again, that comes back to it comes back to the concept of the body has the ability to heal in the right environment, and it's not necessarily due to the practitioner, but the interaction of the practitioner and the patient has probably a better outcome in many cases, and that placebo is 60% of most people's outcome anyway. So in any research study, they have to factor in 60% for placebo. So something has to be better than 60% improvement, or it's not effective, because the placebo in itself is very effective.
Well, I look at Joe Dispenza and his sessions.
Amazing.
And what his outcomes are on just those healing sessions that you do. You prep for it. You got that person in the middle. There's 7 people around you, and you just saw miracles.
Yeah.
Now that's not a drug, an operation, a therapy. That is just it's a placebo effect, really, isn't it? It is the meditation. I remember doing it with him when I did my 7 days here on the Sunshine Coast, and I was blown away by what people were talking about and how they were healing. And I watch, some of the people that talk about it in other sessions that they've done, and they're quite incredible, those sessions. So yes, mind is very strong. The mind is very, very strong, and sometimes we forget that.
Yeah. And I think we think the mind's in our brain, but the mind's in every single cell within the body. And we know that to be the truth, because Bruce Lipton did this, this study. And if you think about what Bruce did, he took what we would call the brain out of the cells of the human cells, and he found that the cells could continue to live for up to 30 days. So without a brain. Really what he did is he took the DNA out, he took the nucleus out, and by taking the nucleus out, what you would expect then is that the brain, which, if you took the brain out of a body, it would die. But the nucleus or the DNA was not that. It was just like the operating manual he took out. So what the cell knew how to do was to live and to heal and to continue to thrive and survive. It wasn't able to replicate because it didn't have the plans, that didn't have the blueprint to be able to replicate, so they couldn't divide again. And so as humans, we need that, and that comes through the gonads. But in order to live, every single cell must be able to communicate with every other cell within the body, and that doesn't require a brain. That requires an electrical message, and that message continues to run through the body for as long as we're alive. And so if we die, nothing really happens to our weight or our being. It's just that we now no longer have electricity running through our body, so we can't stay alive. And it's that we can affect the way in which a cell behaves based on our thoughts, and then who we surround ourselves with, and then the things that we put in our body and on our body. That impacts the way in which our cells behave. We don't need a brain for that.
It's fascinating too when they've done beautiful surgeries where they've done transplants, and those recipients have had memories or thoughts or feelings that are not theirs. And when they've spoken to the families of the people who the donor has come from, they know stories or things about their life that they would never have otherwise known. It's quite fascinating. And I remember Karen Smith talking about skin cells being transported hundreds of miles away, and the memory and all of the associations to it. We are we are miraculous. We are quite incredible. And there is so much we don't know. And even since we all started the Wellness Couch, what I have learned from you guys, or even around the microbiome over the last 10, 15 years, is freaking insane.
Yeah.
As a naturopath and a nutritionist and a chiropractor, naturopaths also use medicines and supplements and things like that. A doctor may use pharmaceuticals and supplements, etc. But is it fair to say that a naturopath comes from a more holistic, or I don't want to knock, I'm not knocking either one. I just want to understand the philosophy behind naturopathy as opposed to general medicine, using plants and what our ancestors and forefathers and mothers have used for generations. Would you give us a little bit of a scenario about what you think about those two philosophies?
Yeah, totally, Kimbo. So the mainstream medicine approach is that health comes from the outside in. So it's an outside in model, which is very reductionist. And so in its approach, it believes that each part operates independently. So the heart operates independently of the lungs, which operates independently of the kidneys, which operates independently of the digestive system, just for example. But they know that it's all connected, and they know that each feeds the other, and there's got to be some kind of interrelation. But it's, even in the way in which medicine's set up, it's set up in specialist groups. So you've got a cardiologist, a gastroenterologist, a nephrologist, a urologist, and, all these specialties are set up around a particular system. In naturopathy, we believe that nature cures. And so it's more around finding what's in nature that can assist people to be well. So whether that's diet, which I believe is probably one of the most powerful ways from a medicine perspective to help people get well, or whether it comes from using herbs with a therapeutic benefit or nutrients with a therapeutic benefit, the approach is meant to be centered around the philosophy that nature cures. That's what it's meant to be. It's probably moved away from that as industry groups have probably not corrupted, but not even hijacked, but taken over the education of the profession, and so that it's now no longer as philosophically centered. So where we would have started with the gut, it's clean the gut out and let's, kind of improve your digestion and make sure that your elimination's working really well and your absorption's really good. Let's see how the body can heal itself by just working on that one system. Because naturopaths used to work on the gut. That's really what it was that we did, gut and liver. It kind of then became a bit allopathic in its approach. And so now people are using herbs and vitamins and minerals, even homeopathy, to treat symptoms. And then to some extent, sometimes chase a problem in a particular area, but with ignorance to the philosophy that nature cures. So that the belief is now that you've got to take this supplement plus this supplement plus this supplement plus this supplement in order to get better, as opposed to starting with the foundations, the groundwork, which is the gut first, and then enabling the body to, kind of heal itself. The complete opposite philosophy to that allopathic approach is the chiropractic philosophy, which is the power that made the body heals the body. And so if you eat a really great diet and there's no other interference to enable the brain to send messages to every single cell within the body to heal itself, then the body can heal itself. And so we look to remove this thing called a subluxation, and the subluxation is this dysfunctional communication between the energy center of the body, which for all in, let's try and keep it easy, we'll call it the brain, but as we've just spoken about, it's every single cell. We want every single cell, let's call it the brain, to communicate with every single cell. And so any kind of blockage to communication, we call it a subluxation. If we remove those subluxations, that could be alcohol consumption, it could be a physical cause of subluxation, it might be sitting down too long, or it could be an emotional cause of subluxation, it might be a loveless marriage. Those subluxations cause the body to remain in a diseased state, not a disease state, but in a state that's less easy. And then the body then will not function well to then arrive in a diseased state. So that if you in order to find the correction of that, ideally you would remove the subluxation and improve the environment, whether it's through food, movement, mindset, or whatever the intervention is going to be. We believe that the power that made the body heals the body. Now, if it gets out of control. You become obese, or you have diabetes, or you now develop a cancer. If it's gone too far, potentially you may need extra intervention, but you've got to come back to what actually works, and that is the respect of the human body, and making sure that this is what they do in Ikaria, this is what they do in Sardinia, this is what they're doing, formerly in Okinawa, and now in Singapore. They respect the power of the human body to be able to heal itself and to live a long time. The body wants to live a long time. It just needs no interference. That's essentially what we're saying.
And it is all about philosophy, isn't it? It's when we have a philosophy, we're not being swayed by every persuasion that's out there. We were speaking with someone last week, and he talked about the philosophy of Stoicism, and I'd never heard about it. So I looked it up after we got off it, and realized that there's this incredible philosophy out there that I'd never even heard of called Stoicism. Because
the Stoics.
The Stoics. That's interesting. So I've always lived the philosophy of vitalism in every part of my life.
You have, yeah.
Because that's how I was brought up. And and the other part of it is the historical perspective of our lives. Like, how did we live? We're evolutionary bodies. How did we live? So they've been my two guiding lights. And for you, your guiding lights sound like they're of the natural world as well as vitalism, which is the opposite of reductionism. It's holism.
Yes, absolutely. So, yeah, I think, Kimbo, going back to that thing, and I 100% agree with you, Cyndi, when we go back to the concept of naturopaths being more holistic, they have the opportunity to be more holistic, but they could easily be very reductionistic in their approach. A vitalistic approach is that embraces the power of the body. And that means the decisions that you make move the body in a direction of becoming vital, becoming filled with vitalism and energy and the ability to repair. A reductionist approach is looking at a systems-based approach where you go, well, let's look at your kidney, let's look at your arm, let's look at your finger, instead of looking at the system as a whole, which the vitalistic approach would do. They're looking at individual systems. So you take a medication for your blood pressure, or you take a medication for your cholesterol, or you take a medication for your depression, and then it's your depression and your heart disease and your cancer, and so you own that disease. So that disease then becomes yours, so you have to own it. So it's really hard to take it away because you've been given the permission to own it because it's called yours. So it's, there's a language attached to all of that as well, so which I think's possibly part of the problem.
Well, when we look at the neural understanding of how these neurochemical loops are created in the brain and how we have a certain philosophy, we're brought up to believe it, we then think it's the only way to look at life until we get questioned, challenged, or have a disrupt in our world. Do we ever question what we're told to grow up? My grandmother was of the belief doctors knew everything. And when she was told to start smoking when Granddad went to war, it's exactly what she did to help relieve stress. I'm sure that's not going to be an outcome today. But, this kind of like not only the neurology of our mind and understanding how we think and feel and what our beliefs and values and alignments with all of that is, I'm fascinated to know your association or thoughts around health span versus lifespan, and how mental health plays such a massive part in our physical well-being or our emotional well-being or our mental and intellectual well-being. What's been your thoughts over the last few years then around mental health?
Mental health it's huge. Like, it's such a powerful influence on our ability to live a long time. And to live a great time, mental health. So people who have struggled with it know exactly what I'm talking about. I sent a message the other day. I was talking with a friend who struggled with addiction. And I said to her, I don't understand it. For me, if there's something that's not good for me, then I'll just stop doing it. If it no longer serves me, I'll just stop doing it. It's not an issue. And then so she shared with me a cartoon, like this really amazing story that has no words. But it shows how addiction works. And it speaks to mental health as well, because these little shiny objects along the way kind of take you to another place, and all of a sudden you find yourself in a darker place and you can't get out. It's really, quite fascinating. It's all come off the back of something that's got to come from the outside to help you heal. And it's looking for someone else to fix you. And when people become, let's say, lost and not able to not know who their leaders are, the people that actually take them back into the light, they find themselves trapped in the darkness. And that's a really tough place to be. But that also comes down to trust as well. You know, who do I trust? How do I get through this? So that's a tricky one, and I'm certainly not qualified to be able to speak on that in any stretch. But what I do understand when I look at lifespan and health span is that the lifespan is that tiny little dash that's between your birth date and your death date. That's your lifespan, just that dash. So everything that you do in your whole life fits into that dash. If you want that dash to become longer, then you have a health span. And so you focus on your health. And so you might eat better, you might exercise more, you might speak to more people, have better social engagement. This is what they do in Ikaria and Sardinia. In the blue zones, they have a better health span. We see that with their statistics. So as a result of having a better health span, they have a longer lifespan. The next thing that we started talking about just recently on 100 Not Out was strength span. So the conversation, putting them together. So when you look at health span and strength span, you significantly elongate that little dash in your lifespan. And so if you can keep your muscles full of power, not just strength, the ability to be powerful for as long as you possibly can improves not only your bone mass, but your metabolism, your ability to walk, to be able to climb, to be able to move, to resist falls. All of these sorts of things prolong your lifespan. Combined with your health span, that lifespan dash now becomes significantly longer if you stay stronger and more healthy. And so I talk a lot about that these days because that's really exciting, I think. So strength span plus health span equals longer lifespan is what I'd say.
One of the quotes that I always do, and it's not my quote, it's somebody else's, and I don't remember where I first heard it, but they say that old age is the endless pursuit for comfort.
Oh, yeah, wow. Yeah.
And when you're comfortable, you sit in a chair and you don't have strength. And when you're comfortable, you might take away food. And when you create more comfort in your life, you might not go to the extremes of cold and heat, and you might not, do all of these things. So you really, I just got that then, that strength span is so important, because without strength, you're looking for comfort all the time.
All the time. You're looking for ways to feel comfortable and out of pain. So you're finding quick fixes. Marcus and I interviewed a lady, Tora Karaharaju Heisman, and she's from Finland. And she did this study into strength span. And then I put it on my LinkedIn. I don't know if you've seen it, but I don't know if I've got it that's separate to LinkedIn. I'll email it to you, but you can check it out on my LinkedIn. You'll be able to see it there. I did a story on strength span versus, plus health span, improving lifespan. And so we interviewed her, and it was an amazing interview. She's so passionate, this woman. She could have talked for 3 or 4 hours. It was amazing, but she was a great researcher. But she's coined this term, which I really love. And I think it adds so much to all the things that we can be doing. If you imagine, Kimbo, if you polishing off your relationships and you're nourishing each other and you're loving yourself and you're loving those around you, and then you're eating really well, Cyndi, and you're focused largely on a vitalistic approach to enhancing the length of the dash. And then, if you're moving really well, like Karen was saying, that Brett would say, if you're doing all of those things, then that's where I feel like the potential to live your best life is maximized. Not necessarily by taking a whole bucket load of supplements to biohack aging. It's really all about, nailing those 3 components. And I think, our message speaks to that.
Well, feeling lately, I just created a whole new program that I'm teaching at the moment called Uncommon Leadership. And the whole philosophy in that is to get their bodies moved, because they've done all my mental, emotional work. They've done programs with me for years, and they're still not getting the results. And I just stood there and went, there's something missing. And I always thought it must be so confusing when you're not in this world 24/7 like all of us are. It must be so conflicting, confusing, and challenging when you see all these different thoughts and insights and people's ideas of what's right and wrong. And so I've turned my philosophy now just into move your body, get outside, just get into nature and move your body and watch your mental health improve. Watch what you want to put into your body improve. Watch how you feel with a bit of sunlight and being hugged with those trees, and what it feels like to get yourself into the ocean or into a lake. And it's like, actually, if you are really confused, if you are really not sure what to do, then get outside and move your body. And I think that's what speaks into strength span, particularly for those of us that are aging now. Well, we're all aging, but those of us over 50, I've really seen the power of strength training and just how quickly we lose it as we get older if we do not keep applying that. Your beliefs around mental health, intellectual, emotional, physical, nutritional, chemical, all of these things tie in so powerfully. And I just wanted to share with you both that as a nearly 57-year-old woman, I just have to say how cool it was. I was just away with my son on a course just recently, and he goes to me, "Oh, Mum, I want to move every morning, want to get up and go." And he's a gym goer, and he's a ice bather and a infrared sauna and all of those things. And I said to him, "Cool, how many Ks do you want to run every morning?" He goes, "I think we should do 10 Ks every morning." And we're away for 4 mornings. And I'm like, bring it on. And so we get up on the first morning, and he's got a bit of a cough and a chest thing. And he goes, "Oh, I think we might only do 5 Ks." And I went, "Okay." So we pushed it and we did 5 Ks. And I took a photo on our way back of me running with him. And the next day he was really sick and he couldn't come, but I still went out there and did another 5, 6 Ks. And I just thought, I actually don't want to take that moment for granted. There's not many 57-year-olds that can run with their fit, healthy, usually not coughing 25-year-old. But it was a moment where I looked at it and I thought, Cyndi can swim with her kids. She can throw balls. She can go to the park and walk for hours with her grandchildren. And I think aging is such a part of, and I think that's what I see when you guys are going to Ikaria and Sardinia, is what I see is a whole lot of communities dancing, walking, building, cooking, playing. Is that really what it feels to you, particularly aging as well? You've got an adult son as well, like what it means to you to age well and strong and healthy?
Yeah. 100%. It's funny you say that, because as you talk about, going for a run with Jacob, I went for a run with Jackson when he was back at Christmas time, and I nailed him, and so I'm, 51, and he's 24. I nailed him. He was like sucking eggs. So I loved that, because I thought, here we go, Jacko, you don't want to end up, not fit enough. So get your butt into gear and, start training more, make the rest of your life the best of your life. And the only way you're going to do that is to, stay super well and fit. So, when we go to Ikaria, and Jackson's had the privilege of coming to Ikaria twice. He's been twice. He hasn't been to Sardinia, but he's going to come to Sardinia this year. And so his immersion into the lifestyles of those that are successfully aging is unparalleled. Like no one else has really done it, at his age. So for him to experience that and to see it, like it's very clear that it's a healthy lifestyle, not just healthy food or healthy movement. It's a healthy lifestyle, which incorporates all those 7 areas, or 8 if you're reading Marcus's book, that is, spirituality, finance, food, community, engagement, purpose, all of those things are the things that, sorry?
Growth, I think growth there as well.
Yeah, mental, exactly. So expansion. So all of these things are the things that contribute to a healthy life and a longer dash. And that's what we see in Ikaria and Sardinia. And then exactly what you were talking about there, Kimbo. You can do this in Australia. You can do this in New Zealand or the US or wherever you are, whoever's listening. You can do this by incorporating shift and change to each of those things, but you must stay strong. Like if you're not strong, it doesn't matter what you do, because it's just all going to fall apart.
Agreed. So you talked about Ikaria and you've talked about Sardinia. Would you like to tell our audience when you're going this year, what they will expect, where they can go? We'll put the link up. We'll put a link up for them to link to it, because I know that Kim and I have been saying we're going to come every year. And this year I'm doing Africa. But 2026 is kind of looking like a year that we'd love to join you. But anyway, 2025, I know there's a heap of people that will want to come.
Oh, thank you, Cyndi. Yeah, look, we are going again, and to go to Ikaria, we're going to Ikaria on the 22nd to the 31st of August. So the 22nd to the 31st of August, we're going to Ikaria. So we meet in Athens, we jump on a little plane, we fly across to Ikaria, we get into a bus, and the bus takes us to the the farthest southwestern tip of Ikaria, a little island, a little part of the island called Nas, and we live in that area for 10 days. It's a beautiful experience, like beautiful, and it's hard to explain it because it's a feeling, it's an emotion, and there's not a whole lot that's logical about coming on these trips because you can experience and see each of these individual things at different times in your life in different locations. It's an emotional decision, like it's a decision that you make with your heart, not with your head generally. From a financial perspective, a lot of people could spend $10,000 doing a different sort of thing. They might go on a cruise, or they might go to Thailand, or they might go to Europe or whatever else and have a different experience. You're going to spend that money on an experience that will shape the decisions that you make in your life, which we're really proud of and very passionate about. The Sardinian trip that we do is the 2nd of September to the 11th of September. And that's traveling through the middle part of Sardinia. So we spend a couple of days in different locations to arrive at the end of an educational journey where you've learned all about the Sardinian culture, their history, their food, their lifestyle, their movement, their archaeology in some cases, to really understand how that community has become so successful at aging well. And that community, I believe, is living life the best. I think the Sardinian culture is nailing it. I think it's amazing. So that's from the 2nd to the 11th of September. And I'm super excited. And they're both around about the $10,000 mark. So, but if it's something that makes you, interested, or you're inquiring and you're wondering whether or not this is for you, then you go to 100notout.com and then have a look at it. And then if you're interested, apply to come with us. We've got spots left. We're speaking to 3 or 4 people in the next couple of days to see if they're suitable to come. To be honest with you, I think we've only said no to a couple of people. Most people who apply get to come. The only reason why somebody wouldn't be able to come is if they couldn't physically do the things that we need them to do. You've got to be able-bodied to be able to come on these trips because we're moving through tight spaces. We're hiking through the mountains. We're working in the farms, not working, we're not slave laborers, but we're doing stuff that's going to require stable feet. So, we look for that. And of course, while you're on there, I'm your chiropractor, and that's all, kind of included, but it's a whole lot of fun. You get to come along and we do all that sort of stuff. So, but we dissect the lifestyle for 10 days in each location. And last year we had, I think 4 people come and do both locations combined back to back. And they said that was a thoroughly enriching, experience. And we had everybody who'd come to Sardinia had been to Ikaria before. So that was also really special as well.
I always find that
I want to go.
Yeah, no. I always find when you go on a cruise, it's like the brochure tour. You stop in Florence, or you stop in Rome, or you stop here, but you really don't get to experience what life is like in Italy or Greece or Spain. And I think that living in a community and like away from that, that area of Florence or Rome or what, where it's always busy and you go to the same thing like the Colosseum or whatever it is. I love that experience. It's probably one of my favorite things, is to just go somewhere and sit. Well, not exactly sit because I like to move, but stay in that area where there's not the tourism, but it's something very different. And I would say that's what this sounds like, is no tourism. It's just living within a community and understanding how these guys have nailed the longevity and health span and strength span.
Yeah, these are immersive programs. So you're being immersed in a culture. You're not looking at it from the outside in. You're not reading a book. It's not done. It's not something that you can just easily watch and then all of a sudden, it's there. You're immersed in it, which I think it's like dipping your hand into a pot of glue. Sometimes you get stuff that sticks. You're actually dropping your whole body in the glue, swimming in it. You're rolling around in the glue. And so it's all sticking to you. And so you can't unlearn what you learn when you come to this stuff. You'll never forget it. Like it's always part of what it is that you do and the decisions that you make as a result of it.
Oh, we're very proud of you too, you and gorgeous Marcus, and you're dead right. Long-time friendships. We think you're bloody incredible, gorgeous Dr. Damo. But we also, I've just got something else to say to you, looking at those AFL shirts behind you. I'd just like to finish by saying go Collingwood in 2025. I just had to get that one in,
Yeah. Collingwood are good. They've done a good job. Last year they did a good job. You could say they're chokers. Yeah, it's highly likely that they'll choke again this year. They've got all the talent. They've got all the ability. Every single opportunity the AFL could throw at them, they've got it. But I don't reckon they'll get it done, Kimbo. Sorry. I reckon it's going to be someone else. It won't be Richmond either. We're not going to make it this year.
Oh, shame. Well, let's see. Whoever wins above the highest in the ladder shouts the other one lunch. Let's just say that.
Well, how about we just say, I'll buy you lunch. I'll buy you both lunch, because that's what's going to happen this year. Richmond's not getting off the bottom. I'll tell you that right now. We're not getting off the bottom. So I'll buy you both lunch. And wherever we are, whether we're here in Melbourne, up there in Queensland, or in Europe, wherever we are, I'm buying you both lunch.
Oh, well, Hobart's just done so well with the cricket, and they're doing incredibly well. So imagine when they come into the AFL, that whole competition,
Oof.
the unspoken Tassie.
Yeah, there's a lot of amazing talent that come from Tasmania. Look at Jack Riewoldt, for example. I mean, he came from Tassie. Unbelievable. Some guns that came from Tasmania.
Yeah. So all your jokes, you Aussies, about those scars on their shoulders and all that sort of thing, I think they're starting to say you can stick it back up your bums, you mainlanders. We're coming to get you.
Yeah, bring it on. I love Tassie. I'd have them up here anytime, and I'd go down there. I love going to Tasmania. It's beautiful.
Very much like New Zealand. And I think it's fair to say, Cyndi, our tours that we've run with people have never been your typical brochure tours. They're always off the beaten track. And what we really love most of all is predominantly for us, what's so special is the connections, and that social purpose and connectivity. One of those 8 of Marcus's is potentially one of the most beautiful parts of combating loneliness, helping to adapt and change our neural approaches and way we think, and also encompassing and incorporating such beautiful health philosophies so that we can, as Cyndi said, increase our health, life and strength span. Thank you so much for joining us on Up for a Chat, beautiful Damo.
Thank you, Kimbo. Thank you so much, Cyndi. It's been such a pleasure. Love it.
This has been a production of TheWellnessCouch.com. Check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation on Facebook.com/The Wellness Couch. Subscribe to each show on iTunes and check us out on Twitter. The Wellness Couch, streaming wellness into your lives.
Whilst the Wellness Couch presenter endeavor to provide accurate and helpful information to their listeners, these podcasts cannot take into account individual circumstances and are not intended to be a substitute for health and medical advice from a qualified health professional. You should always seek the advice of a qualified health professional before acting on any of the information provided by any of the Wellness Couch podcasts.